We haven't seen anything like this before, right? Something of this magnitude and this nature. We actually, we were sensing all the problems and all the possible issues that could come up sometime around mid-March. And while it didn't have any impact on operations, the first thing we quickly did was actually started moving to work from home as far as corporate office is concerned. Close to about 500 people essentially moved to work from home. In the middle of March, between 15th, I think, and the 20th. We also quickly moved our customer contact center, our call center, to try and see how we can get that moving to work from home also very quickly. These were the easiest low-hanging fruits that we could actually quickly get addressed, because our operations can't work from home. I remember on 21st of March, we were suddenly told that the Prime Minister is going to address us in the evening, and by which time I think it was becoming quite clear that the country needs to do something. So 21st, as expected, we had the first lockdown for that just one day, right, which was the 22nd, which is called the Janta lockdown. But sadly, we had a terrible day that day, right? Terrible day. 21st, along with the announcement, the government very, very quickly released guidelines saying that we will now only permit essentials to be delivered using e-commerce, right? And amongst various other steps that they started taking in terms of making sure that, people movement is restricted, all of that, and we knew that it was just a trial and a rehearsal that, that happened on that Sunday, 22nd. Okay. Unfortunately, we were all very geared because we said this is important for us to get geared, because it's almost like doing a national duty, right? We garnered our entire field force, our entire teams in our distribution centers, etc. Got them charged up. And frankly, they all came in the morning on Sunday, all charged and ready to deliver. Unfortunately, what happened was, I think the message from the center didn't really reach the ground level, right? Across the 26 cities that we are operating in. And there was, and naturally so, I mean, I'm not kind of, blaming anybody, but, obviously India being such a large country, anything to percolate from the previous evening to next morning is not very easy. So because of which I think, things were not clear to the local administration in the cities, and the local authorities actually essentially didn't allow us to deliver, right? And within about an hour or two in the morning, we had to shut and stop service. We had all the permissions, we had the letters that we were carrying. Each one was given printouts. But at that time, there wasn't even a concept of passes and all that, because the whole system wasn't actually geared. Okay, and that message hadn't reached the ground level. So I don't blame anybody. So what happened was that we had after that 2 open days, okay, 23rd and 24th, before the lockdown got announced. And in those 2 days, what really happened was that we lost almost 80% of our workforce, right? Because those 2 days, there was absolutely no restriction on any movement, right? For 2 reasons. One was really the fear of COVID, right? Obviously, there was so much floating around that, and good chunk, all of them were migrant laborers, people in the warehouse, picking, packing staff, or loaders, unloaders, etc. A whole bunch of them, almost 80% just left for their homes. Okay, and that meant that they had crossed borders and left. I think it was close to about 13 or 14,000 people, right? So those 2 days we struggled when actually there was no lockdown, we could actually deliver. And then came 25th when the lockdown got announced, right? The first lockdown one. And there again, actually, essentials are allowed, BigBasket was allowed. In those 2-3 days, right? Those were the most difficult days for us actually, basically because our business had come to almost a grinding halt. Not because of anything else. We were allowed to operate. It's just that we didn't have people, right? All other infrastructure is available. We had absolutely no problems with supplies. We had no problems with infrastructure. We had no problems with assets. In early April, very early April, we needed 10,300 people on that day. This is like, absolute moment of truth. We didn't know how we're going to get so many people. We've never hired so many people in a day ever, right? It's completely unprecedented. There was fear in people. Most of our good people, a lot of our productive people had crossed the borders and gone away, right? Mm-hmm. The people who are left with stayed with us because who didn't go. Because they knew that they were the only set of people who are actually getting a salary, at that point in time, right? Each and every employee of ours, whether he was on contract or whether he was on an entrepreneur model working on a per order basis, we made sure were insured for COVID, right? We gave them medical insurance. We made sure that we created enough sanitizing systems for our warehouses, right? Got thermal scanners, made sure everyone is checked, because all said and done, they're people who are experienced, right? And they're productive people. Now is the time to see how to reach out to as many people as possible within the city to start hiring them. And what had happened then was that lot of industries were shutting down, right? Were closing down because they couldn't operate. And there were a lot of such employees, such people who had actually not working, right? So I remember we created at one point in time, HR had 57 partnerships that they were working with, 57 partnerships, which included people like Uber, which included people like taxi services, which included people like, garment factories, which included organizations like National Restaurant Association of India, because restaurants were shut and those people are available for us, which included Retailers Association of India, because a lot of non-essential retail had also closed down, right? All of them were helpful. We actually also had contracts with them where we said that we'll use them till your industry is open, right? And as soon as you open, we will send them back to you, right? Okay. And this is an agreement we had with them so that they are comfortable about giving those people to us, right? Okay. And with some of them, we also told them they will remain on your employment and you don't even need to shift to our employment, right? In about 3 to 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks time, we actually managed to hire close to 9,000 people, right? Or 8,400 people. We today, as we speak, need 1,000 plus people actually. And that is where we are. 23rd, 24th March happened. We were down to some 28,000 orders, right? We normally do 150,000 orders, pre-COVID. Okay. I'm so happy to say that today, we have scaled up to 320,000 orders, right, per day. Okay. Track the situation very carefully, work very closely with the government departments, making sure that we get the required passes, making sure that we make our workplaces safe. We make sure that we get every employee feel comfortable about it. In retrospect, if I think of it, maybe that email, that tweet that I sent and what I put up on Facebook, we were clueless as to what is the next day all about, right? We were trying to scale up, right? Continuously trying to scale up. We weren't too sure of the fact that customers would start complaining to us about wallets, right? Customers always wanted the money into their wallet because it's so convenient, right? For them to use it in the next order, right? The problem was that they were not seeing slots. Availability of slots was not an issue, right? Was an issue. And so a lot of customers were wondering whether, there will ever be a recovery, right? And that is not what we were thinking, yeah, because we are scaling up and growing and growing every day, right? But obviously nowhere close to meeting the COVID demand, right? So in hindsight, currently looks like maybe the communication having gone a week earlier would have maybe helped. But I think what made the difference was the fact that I chose to tell people what really happens behind the scene, right? And that's not something that companies do normally, right? And they don't have to. Is what it has taught me and taught us and taught everybody in our organization is how to do more with less, right? And that meant that what is it that you can do at every part of your organization to get maximum productivity, right? With lesser number of people, right? How do you get highest productivity by working from home? How do you double up in terms of your each one's output? And all that meant was that the only thing that we were really thinking of at that point in time was how do you get more with less? We tweaked a lot of our processes. We brought in a lot of new technology. People worked day and night actually to make sure that we could get all of those up and running, essentially to make sure that we get higher productivity with the lesser people we have, with the lesser resources we have, because everything was constrained during the COVID period.